Okay, I think we are on live. It says live in my corner, so I'm gonna go with it. Technology, I love it. Hello, everybody. You're out there in Facebook land. This is We See You, Conversations About Life Awareness Talk Show. And before we start, I hope everybody's having a wonderful Saturday. And I hear myself, so that means I am live. So before we even start, before I even get into the whole details about our show and our person that is our guest, I want to ask everybody, because every person that we bring on is wonderful and amazing and all that good stuff I say. So, but people won't know that they're wonderful and amazing if we don't share out. So I'm asking everybody, if you see us right now, people that are coming in, and if you see more people, I'll be saying that throughout the hour. If you could just share this particular show, we would really appreciate that. And we're asking, I'm not telling, I'll do that later. But before we go there, I'm just going to start again. This is We See You, Conversation About Life Awareness Talk Show. Co-host Calvin Gibbs, founder of Born to Speak to You, is one of the hosts, and yours truly, Barbara Beckley, co-host and I am the CEO of the Factor LLC. And we are both glad to see you again. We come on the second and fourth Saturdays around this time of the month to discuss and have guests that gives their point of views about awareness in areas of injustice, hopefulness, and just to understand some concerning topics that might make you go, like, I want to know some more things about that. And that's what we bring. So today we have another amazing guest on our show.
Yes.
Let me read her bio. Yes, we do, Calvin. You want to say anything before I start the bio?
Oh, no, just welcome to all the people that's watching right now. It's a pleasure to come to you once again, and I'm excited to get this show on the road. So, Barbara, hit it.
Let's hit it. So we have Miss Mary Knight. Mary retired from social work to become a filmmaker. Each film she makes has a message she feels compelled to share, and we'll get more into that. Her professional accreditation includes not only filmmaking, but also, I said, social work. Mary has her master's degree in social work and 23 years of clinical experience. A survivor of childhood trauma must find their own unique recipe for recovery. Hers includes going public about being sexually trafficked and a child by the KKK family, her mother and dad. So it's going to be kind of interesting. And I'm just going to say right now that I have to totally give Mary so much honor. And I humble myself right now for having on the show, because I know this might get a little deep. And I'm just glad that you're open to talking about it. And you are not just a survivor of that, Mary. I consider you as a conqueror for, going through that in your childhood. So
thank you.
You are a conqueror in our book on this show.
Thank you.
So this is how we're gonna flow today. So we have a few we got more than a few questions. So this is our show, and me and Kelvin's gonna do our co-host thing. So I'll ask a question, and then he'll ask the question. We'll go back to back, and I just want everybody to feel comfortable. If there's some things that you want to express upon even more, this is what we're here for, and we want to hear, what you have to say, Mary, because it's all about just getting that information, your points of view on things. Okay. The first question I have, one of your own stories in your life is that we just mentioned your survivor of childhood trauma that involves sex trafficking and other things, and with your parents, and you decided to go public with that story now and put it on film. Can you kind of give us that story and how it moved you to the opposite direction of kind of racism and injustice?
I made a film about my childhood. I was abused in so many different ways. I can't put all of it into one film or to one essay, because it would just be too horrific to read. So I made a film about my childhood that focused on something that happened, a ritualistic abuse. But it wasn't until I saw the Central Park incident where a white woman, Amy Cooper, called the police on a man who was just trying to do bird watching and, was unarmed. And she called and said, and I'm going to tell him you're African American, which that was the incident that for me was just so appalling. And I know horrific things have happened since and before. As I was watching the news of George Floyd, Mr. George Floyd and his death, I felt called by God to tell this story about my parents' involvement in the KKK. I just knew I needed to go ahead and tell. And so I wrote an essay. I got some help from a writing coach, and I wrote an essay. I'd like to read part of it right now, if that's okay.
Sure.
It seemed like a Sunday drive. I was 8 years old. I had on a pretty dress, white lacy socks, and the shiny shoes that were only for wearing to church. My father drove our Ford station wagon. My mother sat up front by him. We stopped and picked up the medical doctor we called Dr. D. For most medical problems, we went to group health, where my father's insurance through his job at Boeing paid for everything. But when I fell too often or had many bladder infections, I was taken to Dr. D. Dr. D sat in the back seat with me. Somewhere out in the country, we stopped at a shack. A black man invited us in. He may have been one of Dr. D's patients, or he might have been someone my parents knew from their church connections. Once inside, my father and Dr. D pulled out their guns. My father tied, I saw two women there by the kitchen sink. My father tied up the women to chairs in the kitchen. Boards already painted white were taken out of the station wagon, and a cross was erected inside the shack. The man's arms and legs were strapped to it. There was a little girl who was exactly the same size as me. She was cute with tiny braids all over her head. Her dress was clean and ironed. I remember thinking that someone must really love her. One gun was pointed at the little girl's head, and the other gun was pointed at my head. The man was told if he would pretend to die willingly as Jesus did, his little girl would be spared. My mother held an 8mm camera. I knew that there were people who liked to see movies of murders because I'd already been made to lie motionless after beatings and pretend to die on camera. Apparently, people who like to see black men killed also like to see little girls with their clothes off. I had to do things to the man while he was on the cross. As soon as the man died, my father shot the little girl in the head. The women screamed. I screamed too. Dr. D and my father set the shack on fire. My mother tried to grab my hand, but I did not want to leave with the bad people. I wanted to stay with the good people and die. I broke free and ran back into the burning shack. One of the women screamed at me to leave, saying, "Little girl, go so you can grow up and tell what happened."
Wow. So I know a lot of people, I see people coming in, and I know that's deep. And I'm just thinking, just for you being that young, dealing with all that. I mean, that's just so much to take in right now. I mean, even now that you're older, I know, I mean, tell us how, it's changed you in a sense because you don't think or like your dad or your mother, how that they were.
No, I remember
Yeah.
as a little girl knowing, this is horrible. And I've been told this is hard to believe, but sometimes I forget I'm white. I honestly do. When Halle Berry got the Oscar, I was in my living room sitting on the couch and I stood up and started clapping. And it took me a while to go, I was thinking like, we won. And no, it's not we, but I think that's one way I've dealt with it, is that I just really have gotten away from my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary, that is truly, and the word that you used to begin with was horrific. That is definitely something that would be hard to put out of your mind. I want to go back to what you started talking about a little bit as part of this organic conversation. You mentioned the lady in Central Park. And I've been doing a lot of research and asking people their definition of white privilege. First, I'm going to ask you your definition of white privilege, and then I want to speak upon that lady in Central Park that called the police on that Black gentleman. So first, what's your definition of white privilege?
My thoughts I've had lately on it, I mean, just getting mentally ready for this interview, I just thought of the ways my own life that it was easier for me to get jobs because my parents, knew people who knew people, and that was one of the things. Definitely, I didn't remember my abuse until I was 37. So my parents lived a double life. Like, no one knew about them being in the KKK. And except for other KKK people in the KKK. And so, yeah, in saying this, though, I've also got to say that I did have certainly white privilege as a part of my life, but it was horrible being raised by such horrible people. And my mind let me block it out until I was 37. The thing I thought of today, and I kind of was wondering, why am I dwelling on this right now? But I can't relate to what you and what Barbara have gone through. I admit I can't relate to that. But something that helped me kind of relate was today I was thinking, someone told me that my sons have gone through some things because my marriage to their father was not good, and that I should apologize to my sons. But I can't apologize to my sons there were ways I would have been a better mother had I not been married to him, but I couldn't just not be married to him very easily because he could have gotten custody. He had a lot of power. And so within the realm of what I was allowed to do, I did okay. And I think about Black parents who are trying to protect children they can't protect because of these systems that are in place that don't allow it. They don't allow parents to protect their own kids. And there's that way I can relate to. I can relate that I was in a situation that just didn't allow me to provide for my children in ways that I wanted them provided for, because I didn't have enough power. There was I was verbally, emotionally abused, and had I left the marriage, I would have been financially and legally abused as well. So I stayed for a long time. And as I think back to it, I don't know what I could have done better, because who had the power? So that's that's what I can kind of relate to. You would know much more than me about, you're the ones who know and can tell me about what you've seen as far as white privilege.
Well, let me just say this, that my research, and after going through so much documentation and asking so many questions of people of color, people that are white, that lady in Central Park, to me, is the definition of white privilege. And let me explain why. Because she felt empowered to call the police, lie on this man, and expect a result that he would be taken away, and with things about cops and Black people, probably would get beat up or killed.
Right, yeah. And his sister has said, he's Harvard educated, but his sister has said, they don't look at your resume before they arrest you. And so, but yeah, I also like the fact that she really messed with the wrong person, because Mr. Cooper's sister has such a huge Twitter following. And so it was, and certainly, well, yeah, I'm glad it got so much media attention. Very glad it got so much media attention. But the sad thing is that, yeah, that she would even, it's.
And things didn't get worse or didn't turn out as she thought it was going to, and it could have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass back to Barbara at this point for the next question.
Yeah, before I get to my next question, though, Mary, I just want to take a step back, which I know was horrific, your story when you was reading to us. But the thing that I wanted to bring up with that, just the whole, just taking it far as when you were a child, and kind of it was so traumatic that you kind of blocked it out, like you said, until you were the age of in your 30s, for this to come back and say, oh my God, this all happened. Now I just want to just swing it over to children, because now that happened to you. I mean, it was, I know we're all up in age now, but right now things are still happening in households where parents are either teaching or showing children either way, how to be racism, or you shouldn't like this particular race. So what would you say to those parents right now, because of after everything that you had to deal with? What would you say to those parents right now, or just people in general out there?
Right. I was taught that I was better than other people. I was taught that I was better than other people because of the church I went to, that I was better than other people because of how I looked, that I was better than other people because of how I dressed, because I used grammar correctly. I mean, it was just, there were so many ways I was taught to be a elitist, and that didn't serve me well, because really it just separates you from true love. And people are people. And I mean, I would look at children, and my mom taught me to look at kids and say, oh, that child's really cute, that child's not so cute. I mean, that's absurd. All children are beautiful. And it made me not be able to see the beauty in people. I think it was also a way to keep me, abusers like for you to distrust the people who are going to be able to help you get out of the situation. So I was, it's so relaxing just to be a person instead of having to think you're better than someone, because really deep down inside, I think we all know we're not, you know, that people are people. And I didn't believe, even as a young child, things they would say about Black people. That's not what I saw in my own experience. And so I didn't believe it.
And see, that's what I wanted to bring up, because you were very strong. Because, you know, when you're a child and you're trusting in, you're trusting your parents are telling you and guiding you and giving you, you know, what you need to grow and to be the person you're supposed to be when you get older. So you're trusting. There's a trust factor there, and your parents saying, well, you know, this person is better than that person. So in your mind as a child, you might be saying, well, my parents said that, so that's what I'm supposed to believe in. But with you, Mary, that's why I commend you so much, is with everything you went through and what you've seen and what you had to endure, you still said, you know what, something's wrong with this picture. Something's wrong with that. And that's why, you know, I wanted you to answer that question, because just because you're taught a certain way, or if your parents show you certain things, or other family members, whatever that, you can make a choice still. There's still a choice that you can make in your life. And you did that.
I had an intense spiritual experience when I was 6 years old. I had just been gang raped. I saw my mother literally take money from men, literally. We were out front of our house. We lived in the country, and my parents were both there. They took footage. They had their movie camera out. And it was about 5 or 6 men, all white. I don't know where my father knew them from. But after that, I was really injured. I mean, physically injured. And I remember wanting my mom to just pay attention, you know, just to have some compassion for me. And she didn't. And I looked up, because I really wanted to die, but I looked up, and I may have had a near-death experience. I don't know, because I really had been very injured. That could have been, or it could have been, you know, maybe some people don't believe in that sort of thing. So maybe it was just out in Washington State, there's lots of trees, and it was just the sun coming through the trees. But I saw this bright light, and I believe it was God. And I believe God was basically saying, you know, I'm yours. So I feel like I connected with God at that point and was nurtured by God. And throughout my life since then, there have been times when I feel like I have been nurtured directly from God, like God has been my father, God has been my mother. So I feel very fortunate to have made it through horrific things. I do want to say, just because there's probably some other survivors listening to this, that not everyone can make it through. I mean, not, you know, it's like, I still take antidepressants. This is not, I get counseling. I find survivors being really harsh on themselves and saying, well, she could do it. I should be able to too. But no, this has taken me, see my gray hair, this has taken me a long time to get to the point that I can talk like this and be okay talking like this.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you before the interview and everything, you know, the questions we asked, are you going to be okay? Because like you said, even though you've been dealing with this and everything, we want to make sure that, you know, you're okay talking about it. And believe me, as you said, Mary, it is helping. Just to let you know, it is helping a lot of people out there, because people are getting abused, sex trafficking. It's still going on. It's just in a new year.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but it is just going on. So you're talking about it, just having that courage to do that. I commend you for it. Now, I know you probably touched a little bit on, because I know you have a personal documentary called I Am Crazy, where you bring awareness of the trauma and, you know, the suffering that you overcame. So I was going to ask you, can you give us a quick overview on why you decided to share that with the world now?
Oh, my documentary came out, I think, 4 years ago, a personal documentary, and it's about my own recovered memories. So I wrote I wrote an essay about the atrocity I shared with you earlier about the KKK atrocity. And I sent it in to, I wanted to get into this MFA program, Masters in Fine Arts. And first they accepted me, and then they said, well, you don't have any, you don't have any proof of this. You don't know the names of the victims or anyone. And I'm like, yeah, because my parents got away with it. I'm like, yeah, I don't. And I felt like they were saying they didn't believe me, like the MFA program was saying, I don't believe you. So I also was thinking about doing a documentary. And with the documentary, you want a question, to answer a question. So the next morning I woke up with that title, Am I Crazy? And I thought, when people don't believe me, for me to believe these things, if they're not true, I don't know what they would think, except for that I'm crazy. And most people don't think I'm lying. And so I thought, that's a good question. Am I crazy? And my parents were already deceased, but I decided to talk to people who reminded me of my parents. And I went and talked to people who don't believe memories like mine exist. There's actually an organization called the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. It just closed this year, but it had been going on since the early 90s, saying that memories like mine weren't true. And most people in the organization are pedophiles. So my parents were in it. So they're pedophiles who don't want to get caught, and they don't want people like me to be believed. So I interviewed those people, and so I have footage of me sitting across from the people, just letting them ask me any question they want. Mm-hmm. Well, when I was asked questions, I became even more sure my memories are true, because I'd already asked myself all these questions. I was a forensic social worker when I remembered my abuse. So I was used to being asked questions on the witness stand. I asked myself all those questions. And there was nothing new that came from other people asking me, except for that I quit being afraid. Like, that was something I was afraid of. I quit being afraid of that. And my husband has noticed that I'm more calm now. And it also got me that film tells my process in coming to terms with my father. Mm-hmm. Basically, how I come to terms with it is to just say he was never a father to me. I mean, for a man to take money from people so their daughter can be raped, that's not a father. It's just not what a father is. So it was like God's always been my only father. So I have some footage of that, me saying things like that while sitting on my father's grave. And it also has Dr. Bessel van der Kolk in it, who is a famous neuroscientist. So I was able to interview him. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and he is an expert on traumatic memory.
Awesome. So Calvin, I'll take it away with you. I know you have some questions.
Yes. Mary, first I'd like to say that although you were taught racism by your parents, from your experiences and what you saw, a lot of times racism is something that is sewn into the fabric of this country.
Oh, absolutely.
People learn it without being taught per se.
Yes.
A child growing up without any conversation in the home about racism can learn it just from seeing how people are reacted to.
Yes.
The black dolls are bad, the white dolls are good,
yes.
things like that. So with that being said, I want to ask you about your profession a little bit. Did your upbringing have anything to do with the professions that you have taken on?
Oh, they had everything to do with it. I subconsciously wanted to protect kids and wanted to find good homes for kids. So I've placed over 100 kids in adoptive homes. And it was just obvious to me now that I was trying to protect kids in a way that I couldn't, because I was made to watch other kids being abused. And I was trying to protect kids in ways that I couldn't as a kid. So that was my whole motive with social work. And I did interracial adoption some, but I tried to place Black children in Black homes. And I did some things to recruit Black families. Like I asked to take a trip to a Black college so I could, talk to alumni there. I really tried to find Black homes for Black kids. I don't think it's, that's, Black kids need to be raised by Black parents. It's just obvious. And if they've already not being raised by their biological parents, then their adoptive parents, in my view, that's what needs to happen. That's something, tell me if you see it differently, but there's still white families adopting Black kids. There's celebrities, Sandra Bullock. And that just shows there's an economic inequality, or that shouldn't still be happening. I was placing kids in adoptive homes in the 80s, and we were already being told, do everything you can to find a Black home for a Black child. And I was always so pleased when that happened. And it's still an issue, which shows economic. It shows the economic inequality.
Disparity. Yeah.
Yeah, huge disparity. Yeah.
Yeah. I am going to slightly disagree with you in that, and I know I'm probably going to get some flack from some friends of mine, but I'm not sure that Black kids need to be in Black households. Children that need to be adopted need love most of all. It can come from a couple of the same sex. It can come from a couple of the opposite race, or a single parent of the opposite race. To me, it really doesn't make a difference as long as that child gets the love that they need to be a functioning and contributing member of society.
Definitely. I agree with you. It's just that by now, yeah. But, I agree with you. And I have placed, I've seen some excellent families that are interracial. And I've talked to children who were raised by parents who of a different color. I actually have one friend she was adopted by a Black family. She was a special needs infant, and when she became adoptable, they adopted her. So she's a white woman raised by a Black family. Yeah, the love is what's important. I totally agree. The love is what's important. That's what the child needs. And if the child's, I feel like if the child's in an interracial family, that it's important for the child to have adult role models who have the same color skin. And then I think that can be a way for that to work really well for the child.
Remember the TV show Different Strokes?
Yeah.
Arnold and Willis, they had it made.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I do remember that. Yeah.
Barbara, back to you.
See, Elgo, you always do that to me. You leave with that, and then I'm like, okay, let me get my mind back together. So, just to add to that, I do kind of agree. I mean, both of you had good points, but I do agree with Calvin that the love had to come first before the color or anything in my mind. And I'm probably saying that because I was raised, I had a white dad and a black mother, so people probably already automatically know I'm going to say that. But I'm saying it too because, like you said, we got to look at what the child needs. Now, the biggest thing that I would say, though, if you have a black child and you had a white family that was going to raise them, I hope that the white family would still will basically tell the black child, okay, you're black, you're important, you're special, you have value, because I don't want them to get lost because they have a white family. They can't get lost into the whole, well, I'm black and I'm different. They have to be there to help them, to support them, to explain, that their race is just important as anybody else's race. So I think that would be the thing that I'd be concerned about too. Besides them getting love for them, is that they have the identity there for them. So.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. But I was gonna say, my question would be, can you give, because I know there's steps on how you had to go through with your trauma. So can you just give some of the audience just a few ideas for them? Because as I know, there's some people out there that might have dealt with what you dealt with. What kind of steps that they can take, and what helped you?
So many different things. So I have a page on my website, How I Healed, and it's a very long list. The things that come to mind at the moment are meditation or prayer or both. I do yin yoga, which is, it's YIN, yin yoga. It's where you hold the pose for like 5 minutes. I do it for an hour. I did it today, where you have just a few poses you hold for a long time. And then you can meditate during it. It helps me meditate because it relaxes my body. At the same time, I'm relaxing my mind. I need some sort of meditation in my life. Spirituality is real important. For people who don't, psychotherapy I couldn't have made it without psychotherapy, but that can be expensive. And another way to get support that I do use now is a 12-step group. So Al-Anon is a 12-step group that applies to almost everyone, because everyone has a friend or a family member who's has a problem with alcohol or has had a problem with alcohol. And that's a nice free support group. I've had physical therapy because I had a lot of chronic pain, and physical therapy has been really helpful. My latest clip I worked on is about pelvic floor physical therapy, which is physical therapists can be trained to do the same sort of work as a gynecologist does. So that it can be really helpful to sexual assault survivors. And eating healthy, just simple things like eating healthy helps me because I had all that chronic pain. I have, and I quit eating chocolate for 14 years. And it's because, I couldn't get rid of the chronic pain. So that's how hard I tried to just really get well. And now I can eat it again. But I was just really careful to stay away from anything that could have caused pain, coffee, things like that. And people don't usually like that suggestion very well, but, and also exercise.
Yeah.
Friendships are one of the things that have really helped me. I had friends from the time I was young, and just the fact that I already had the basis for a lot of friendships when I remember my abuse was very helpful. The fact that I didn't remember my abuse until I was 37 made my life much easier because I was able to get this solid basis that I could be fine without my parents.
I'm just thinking. I couldn't fathom like all those years you were growing up, you were kind of just doing your, just living, and then all of a sudden at 37, boom, it's
Yeah.
like maybe stuff just blew up. Like, oh my God, and then now you have to say, okay, my whole life, what? This happened? Oh my God, how did all this, So I know that was a big jump for you, and thank you for giving some, ideas for people that might be going through it or had the same thing that you went through, where all of a sudden it's like, here I go. Now I got to deal with all this.
And
So,
I'll also say that if survivors want to contact me, I'm fine for them to do so. You can contact me through Facebook or through my website. And, I can arrange a time to even have a telephone conversation with you. And I do give a promo code for my film to survivors who can't easily afford it. I also am working on a film now, Mothers and Molestation, a film about child abuse, which tells my process in healing from the relationship I had with, a mother who's abusive. And that's, if people want to contact me privately, I can let them see the rough draft. It's not publicly available yet.
awesome.
And I'm going to come out with a memoir, so it's going to have this essay, my parents were KKK members and pedophiles, but it's also going to have some other essays and include a short story that is a positive. It's about a connection with a little girl angel. So it's all real positive.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're giving back, and like I said, people will really that'd be really helpful to them. So I'm going to give it back to Calvin. I know he has some questions.
Yes. What is your website, Mary?
www.maryknightproductions.com.
Everybody got that? www.maryknightproductions.com.
And it's Mary, M-A-R-Y, and then my last name is K-N-I-G-H-T. So it's M-A-R-Y-K-N-I-G-H-T productions.com. Thank you, Calvin.
You're welcome. Mary, would you say that, well, first, let me ask the question. What would you say is one of your defining moments? And would that have happened after the flood of memories came back or before? What is one of your defining moments?
Moment?
Sound like that's a good one.
That's good.
Maybe, I know, maybe when you were able to eat chocolate again.
Yeah. Well, the thing that came to mind, it was really hard to leave my first marriage. I was basically disabled from the extreme chronic pain, and I was leaving a lot of security. So I remember driving away from that home, and that being so hard. And then I married someone wonderful in 2010. And my husband is Jewish, which my parents were anti-Semitic in addition to other racism. So that has been a wonderful part of my life. I became a foster mother a year ago, and that was just great to be able. I actually applied to be a foster parent with one agency, and they turned me down because I had such a horrific childhood, which should never happen, but it did. And I went with another agency. I'm with Secret Harbor, which is a private agency in Washington State. And then they approved me, and then Washington State licensed me and my husband as foster parents. That has been something I hadn't expected to do. Someone encouraged me to do it, and I didn't know you could do respite care. It's basically like telling someone you want more grandkids, because they just come, the kids just come. And well, in Washington State, foster parents get 2 nights off a month, and they usually take it on the weekend. So my husband just went and picked up a little boy, and they're gonna eat a snack and get home after this is over, a 9-year-old boy, and we just so enjoy him. He designed a water slide for our backyard. So we have this homemade water slide in our backyard. He's a really bright little boy. So that has been a really fun part of our lives, and really fun for me and my husband, because we didn't have children together. So now we get to have these kids, and yeah, and that's fun. And the foster children we have are some they're of different ethnic backgrounds. And yeah, so let's see, other defining moments. I think it was good for me to get a master's in social work. I think by getting that degree, it was a way to, because my mother would basically always say she knew more than me. And you know, it's hard to do when you have a daughter who's a mental health professional. So that was really good. And then doing each of my job where I did forensic social work, where I testify in court, it really helped my confidence level, because you have these attorneys trying to make you look stupid on the witness stand, and sometimes I would just say the right thing. I did divorce custody evaluations, so I wanted to say the right thing because I wanted whichever parent I was recommending to get custody. That's what I can think of.
Okay, and you know what? I can tell from that, when you talk about work, you get real serious and straightforward. But when you talk about helping the kids and the 9-year-old that made the water slide, you light up, you get excited.
I really,
and I can tell that that's something that you really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
Barbara.
I can understand why. I mean, dealing with what you had to deal with, you probably, every child you see, you just want to hug them and give them love and and just say, you know what, I'm here for you, just like an angel, like you said, you had your angel that you've seen through everything. So you're an angel to them. I mean, in their eyesight, you're their angel. I mean, you're the person that's there for them. So I can see it right now.
I knew I would feel like I was doing something important when I became a foster mom, and I knew I would be helping kids, but what surprised me is how much fun it is. It's really so much fun.
Yeah, they'll get you, and sometimes they feel like you said they know more than us. Sometimes I'm like, really? Yeah. They'll try you if you let them try you. You're like, oh no, what did I get myself into? So I was just going to ask you, with individuals facing many challenges, as we're all knowing today, with the pandemic and the economical thing and the injustice, as far as you being a filmmaker, your mission is to help people express their own stories like how you did. So why do you feel that's important for individuals to be compelled to share their story? Because I know sometimes some people might get nervous about that or not feeling, but it seemed like you found that, like, okay, I need to do this. So how would you help people get to that point?
Well, I don't think everyone needs to. I really don't. I think you can heal. There's different ways to heal, and some people it's helping other people. Some people it's being a mom, being a really good mom, or being a dad, being a real good dad. I don't think someone needs to do something like what I have done. I feel really blessed to have been able to have the opportunity to make films, because filmmaking is really expensive. I'm not able to help other people tell their story through film because it's just so expensive. Writing a book is much less expensive, and but I talked to someone about that I interviewed former Miss America, Marilyn Vanderveer, for my films. And
Okay.
I asked her, do you think everyone needs to go public? And she said, no. And she said, if shame is what's holding you back from going public, then that's not a good reason. You need to get rid of the shame. But that doesn't mean you need to go public. For me, it's been good to go public. I'm glad I have, but I don't recommend it for everyone. And I certainly have people come to me and say, you know, I don't feel like I can talk publicly about it for this reason. I'm in a position where I can speak publicly, but when I was a social worker, I didn't. When I had young children, I didn't. As a social worker, the problem with being a forensic social worker is that I could have been asked questions about that on the witness stand. It could have drawn attention away from my client who I was trying to support. And it even could have, unfortunately, discounted me, at least at that time. And so I didn't go public. I talked to other people who, because of their profession, they don't go public, or because of another family member. And I tell about my cousins because I have 4 cousins and an aunt with similar memories to mine. They also saw Black men killed on crosses. And so they were very helpful to me as I remember my abuse, but none of them want to go public. So they have not been, some of them have been less than supportive of me going public. And other people, everyone is in some kind of a family group or some group, and it affects so many people for you to go public. So the other reason I can go public is that that it's easier for me to go public is my parents are deceased. And, you know, I can't be sued by them. And they did have money. But there was a young woman who said, well, maybe we could co-write this. And I knew that it would be hard for me to co-write something, even though she had a similar experience to mine, because her parents are still alive. So I told about her while keeping her anonymous, which if she wants to speak out, she can, but I was concerned with getting sued about it. But I would like to share what I wrote about her. I also want to share that these things are still going on. People can say, you know, this was in about 1964, that the atrocity I mentioned, the shack, the atrocity, murders.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Mary, before you read that. I'm glad you brought that up because I said earlier that, you know, this was in the 60s, 70s, but we're 2020 and still is happening in this,
Yes.
you know, life. So yeah, thanks.
So I wrote, so days after Mr. George Floyd was murdered and I was flooded with memories once again of my father's brutal acts, I posted something about my parents on Facebook. Not even 4 hours later, I was contacted by 2 different individuals, both with skin the color of mine. One said, I witnessed the murder and dismemberment of a Black girl when I was 8. The little girl was 8 too. The other was a young woman who was sex trafficked as a child by relatives. She told me that her mother is currently in the KKK and is a sex trafficker of minors.
So this was recent.
Oh,
this
yeah.
Is recent.
This was, this young woman is about 30 and she is white. Her mom's currently in the KKK and currently sex traffics children. And you know, this person has tried to turn it in. It's hard, you know, it's sometimes hard to get proof, especially when it's really organized abuse like that. And so it's not that this young woman doesn't want to turn it in, and she's certainly opposed to what her parents are doing, but yeah, so she wanted to co-write with me, and for legal reasons, it would put me in some liability issues if I had shared her name, but
Yeah.
I can share what I just shared and
without saying
yeah,
anything.
yeah. But
Yeah,
that's,
see?
I like to point out this is still happening. These things, these horrible things are still happening to children. These horrible things are still happening to Black individuals, and the KKK is still active. My parents really, they pretended to be the opposite of racist. And that gave them more ability to victimize Black people. They, my parents were in the Ku Klux Klan, but they led this double life. My father had top security clearance with the federal government. He was an aerospace engineer, and to the time, he was never arrested for anything. I've called several police stations. I've called, I just couldn't get an investigation because there wasn't something for me to prove, and because recovered memories are discounted so much. The fact that I remembered, and my cousins remembered, my aunt remembered, but our memories are discounted because all of us, they're recovered memories. But my father would, my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, were on the board of directors of a Black Christian college in Texas. And then my dad was a real spirited song leader. This was in Church of Christ, which doesn't have piano. It's considered against the Bible to have instrumental music. So anyway, he would lead singing, and he would get invited to gospel meetings held by Black churches. And so, I mean, they would do these things to appear non-racist. And I think that was their way of finding more Black victims. And also, I mean, my parents never used a racial slur. I have never heard either of my parents use a racial slur. And when I was taught eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it involved catching a monkey by the toe. So they went out of their way to appear very different than they were. I never saw my dad look at a woman's legs or breasts either. They went very far to act like these perfect people, and then they got away with very literally murder.
Wow.
It was very strategic how they did it.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, our time is just about up. I want to thank you so much for being our guest today, for sharing your story with us and all of the listeners. We wish you nothing but the best. And again, if you are a victim of abuse, you can reach out to Mary on Facebook. It's Mary Knight, Knight, or through her email, her website, which is maryknightproductions.com. We will have another session of We See You, Conversations About Life's Awareness, in 2 weeks on August 22nd at 4 p.m. Central Time. Please join in at that time. It's going to be on the Diamond Factor page. Barbara?
No, it's gonna be on my personal.
It's going to be on Barbara Beckley's personal page, and that will be 4 p.m. August 22nd. I am proud to be the co-host, Calvin Gibbs, along with
Barbara Beckley.
And we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary.